Hi, I'm Dr. Michelle Campbell with Graduate Communications and Intercultural Programs in the Pratt School of Engineering at Duke University. And today's video module is about statements of purpose for PhD applications. Let's get started. Today we're going to talk about just a quick introduction to statements of purpose, an activity about the ideal qualities for master's students, PhD students, and the qualities both might have in common. Some advice before you write, the SOP specifications, an activity that shows us how different statements of purpose differ depending on universities and programs. We'll talk about what your audience wants to see, some more advice that I have for you, and a final brainstorming activity. So let's get started with a quick warm-up activity. So what I want you to think about are the ideal qualities of a master's student versus the ideal qualities of a doctoral student, and maybe some ideal qualities that both have in common. Go ahead and pause this video and take as much time as you need to brainstorm these ideas, and press play when you're ready to begin again. Now that you've had a chance to think about some ideal qualities of a master's student, some ideal qualities of a doctoral student, and some qualities that might be in common to both, let's think about some that you may have come up with. So a master's student often needs to be very successful within a classroom. So that means that a master's student needs to be able to have good time management skills, but with deadlines that are already set for them. In contrast, a doctoral student only usually takes coursework within the first couple years of their program. After that, they need to be able to work independently and collaboratively with deadlines that are sometimes set by themselves and sometimes deadlines that are set by external factors such as grants or the lab as a whole. So master's students often need time management between several due dates in quick succession, whereas a doctoral student needs to be able to manage their time maybe a little bit more closely because their deadlines are not usually as set or as close together. Both a master's student and a doctoral student need technical skills. However, a master's student often needs more willingness to learn something new, whereas a doctoral student needs to have some willingness to be able to perfect some of the basic skills that they've already learned. I'm sure you thought about a lot more, and I would encourage you to keep thinking about this as you think about whether or not applying for a doctoral program is right for you. So our next part is to think about some things you need to think about before you write the statement of purpose. So the first thing that you should do is carefully research the program and labs. You should read their website, their graduate manual, and any other relevant documents that they might have. You should contact the Director of Graduate Studies and your potential PI if the program admits directly to a lab or professor. So there's usually two types of doctoral programs that directly admit to a PI, and then there's doctoral programs that admit to a rotation. And a program that admits to a rotation, you often choose your PI after your first year, or perhaps at the end of your first year. So you should contact the Director of Graduate Studies if it's a rotational program, or your potential PI if it admits directly to a lab or professor. You should use this as an opportunity to investigate fit and what makes each program unique. You should ask one or two questions that are genuine, but also show that you've done your homework. So for example, you would not want to ask a question whose answer can readily be found on their website. So you wouldn't want to ask a potential PI, what kind of research are you working on right now? Because that information is on their website. An example of a question you might ask, however, is, as I saw on your website, your graduate program is affiliated with a university-wide initiative to support future faculty. Because I am strongly considering a career in academia, could you tell me more about how PhD students currently in the program utilize this resource? This is a perfect question because it shows that you've done your homework, that you've read about the program and the types of opportunities and resources that they offer. But it also gives a potential PI or director of graduate studies some insight about you, about your goals and your motivation for pursuing a graduate study before you even start your application. So let's talk about the specifications for the statement of purpose. Most of the time, the format is going to be Times New Roman style font, size 11 or 12, and 1-inch margins unless otherwise specified. You do not want to have teeny tiny little text, and you also don't want to have teeny tiny little margins. And some people say, well, why not? They gave me a page count, not a word count. Well, I can tell you as somebody who has taught writing for a long time and somebody who has applied for programs that when you make really small font or you change document dimensions so you can squeeze more in, it actually looks like you're trying to bend the rules, that maybe you think the rules don't apply to you or that you're bad at following rules. And you do not want a potential PI or director of graduate studies to think that about you as kind of their first impression before they even read your document. You want to have you want your statement of purpose to be clearly organized. So you want to have a clear introduction. You want to have a thesis statement, which is your argument that you would be a good fit for the program that you're applying to. And you need to have evidence, but the specifics depend on the institutional prompt, and we'll look at a couple of those in a moment. The length depends on the institutional requirements, but it's usually 1 to 2 pages. If an institution says 2 pages is the maximum, do not go over those 2 pages, not even 1 or 2 lines onto the 3rd page. Again, it's another sign to the committee or to the potential PI that you think it's okay for you to bend the rules. And I've heard from some admissions staff that if the statement of purpose goes on longer than the stated maximum, they actually just stop reading. So it's better for you to just comply with all of the rules when you're writing your statement of purpose, to show that you're professional and that you can follow directions, rather than thinking that you are clearly an exception and you can go a couple more lines because what you have to say is so important. I promise you it's much better to stay within the specifications of the rules that they've laid out for the guidelines. In terms of the genre or type of document, it's a professional argumentative document. So let's think for a second. What is your argument? Your argument is that you're a good fit for the program to which you are applying, and that program is a good fit for you. So that argument needs to appear at the beginning of your statement of purpose, and all of your evidence in your document, and really in your entire application, is moving you toward making the case that you are a good fit for that program. So that's really important to keep in mind. People will often ask, who is the audience? Who will be reading my statement of purpose or my documents? Well, the admissions staff, certainly. It could be directors of graduate study within the program to which you are applying. Faculty admissions committee, if the program is rotational, it actually might be a committee of faculty who are making the decisions for admitting students, or it's the PI or the rotation faculty. So there's a lot of different people who could be reading your statement of purpose. And so you want to make sure that you're providing as much information as possible in a clear, concise, and professional way. Let's look at some real examples of statement of purpose guidelines. As we're reviewing these, I would like for you to think about, what do you notice? What's missing? Here I have an example from Duke University, which just has one general prompt for all graduate school applications. So this is true for students who are applying for engineering, humanities, social science. And then I have an example of guidelines for the Stanford Bioengineering PhD program. And I will say that these are current as of March 2020. If you are applying for PhD programs in the future, please look at the institution's website do not rely on this slide right here. So let's take a look at Duke's general guidelines for statement of purposes for graduate school. It says, as part of your online application, you must upload a statement of purpose. The statement should be 1 to 2 pages and single spaced. So right there we have our page limit, 1 to 2 pages. It shouldn't be less than 1 page and definitely not more than 2 pages, and it should be single spaced. It should briefly discuss your purposes and objectives in pursuing graduate study, your special interests and plans, your strengths and weaknesses in your chosen field, any research projects or independent research in which you have actively participated and how they have influenced your career choice and desire to pursue graduate studies, and any particular reasons you may have for applying to Duke. For example, you would like to work with a specific faculty member. So you can see that there's a lot of information here to cover in just 1 to 2 pages, but you can do it as long as you're very judicious and you choose some examples wisely. So I personally, in my very first paragraph of statement of purpose, would identify the program that I'm applying to and the faculty member I would like to work with. If it's a direct admit to a PI program, in my second paragraph, I would describe the PI's research and then discuss how my current research or my research trajectory fits with the PI. In other words, how I could help the PI and the PI's lab do their research. You'll see that one of the points here is any research projects or independent research which you have actively participated and how they've influenced your career choice. This is definitely a pretty standard paragraph in most statements of purpose. You should be able to give some examples of when you've done independent research and maybe include in there some strengths and weaknesses or some challenges that you had in pursuing independent research. But keep in mind that they usually can read about your research project and some of your other documents, at least at a surface level. So in your statement of purpose, you need to be providing some details and specific examples that they cannot get from other parts of your application. Additionally, you should use a specific example of an independent research project to show what you learned and how what you learned makes you a good candidate for doctoral study. Let's take a look at the Stanford Bioengineering Guidelines, and you'll see that there's some things that are quite similar. So in this guideline, it says you should succinctly describe your reasons for applying to the bioengineering PhD program, which may include preparation and motivation for graduate study in bioengineering, research and relevant work experience, specific features of our program and university that make us a good fit for you, possible general areas of research you might pursue, any faculty member's research that is of specific interest to you, and aspects of your background and interests outside of research that are directly relevant to thriving in graduate school, such as obstacles overcome and experience in service and leadership. And you'll note at the end their length guidelines. The maximum length is 3 pages single-spaced. The recommended length is 2 pages. So if I was applying to Stanford's bioengineering PhD program, I would definitely make sure that my statement of purpose was as close to 2 pages as I possibly could get it. So because it's their recommended length, and that shows that you care to take the time to follow their guidelines, especially their recommended guidelines, and you're saving the people who are reading your statement of purpose some time by keeping it to 2 pages rather than 3 pages. You can see with Stanford's guidelines that they really have some things that are similar to Duke's guidelines, but note that they're in a different order and they're worded a little bit differently. So, you know, I really caution you, do not submit the same statement of purpose to multiple programs. You might be reusing, for example, a research paragraph, or maybe using, you know, different versions of the same statement of purpose. But if you want to do a good job and you want to show that you're a good fit for a particular program, you really need to be submitting a different version of your statement of purpose to every program because the guidelines are different for every program. Now that we've looked at some guidelines, I'd like for you to think about what your audience wants to see. So your audience wants to see a clear argument about why you are a good fit for this specific program at this specific institution. And again, as I said, this means that every statement of purpose needs to be tailored to that program and mention program-specific attributes. You might be thinking, won't that take a lot of time? Absolutely. Applying to graduate school and particularly PhD programs takes a lot of time if you're going to do it well. It's just like searching for a job. Often people will say looking for a job is a full-time job. Well, applying to PhD programs is like a full-time job. The good news is that there's a deadline, usually in December or January. So it does get a little bit easier after that deadline when you can't work on those applications anymore. But definitely be prepared to have a very busy October and November. The sooner you can start on your application materials, including your statement of purpose, the better. I often recommend that students start thinking about and writing first drafts of their statements of purpose and other application materials beginning in June or July in the summer before they would like to apply. What else does your audience want to see in your statement of purpose? Well, faculty want to know that your research fits with what they're doing, and they want to know how they can benefit from your inclusion in their lab. What skills and experiences do you bring to the table? Ideally, at the end of doctoral study, you become an equal collaborator. You might be a junior collaborator, but you become an equal. So this is much different than an undergraduate or a master's program, where after you graduate, you're still really a student to that faculty member. By the end of a doctoral program, you should be able to have the skills and the experience to be an independent researcher yourself. So this is much more of almost a working relationship, or that's what it usually becomes by the end of your PhD, rather than a student-teacher relationship. Directors of graduate study and admission staff want to make sure that you have the attributes of a successful doctoral student and that you will succeed in the program. So you can think about it this way. Directors of graduate study and admission staff are thinking about you as an investment. A doctoral degree can take anywhere from 4 to 10 years. In engineering, the average length is usually 5 to 7 years, I believe. That's a lot of time and money for you, but it's also a lot of time and money for the institution that you're at. You should only be going to graduate school if they're giving you tuition remission and a full stipend, if you're going to be a full-time doctoral student. And so that represents a significant investment of the institution into you as a junior scholar. So they want to make sure that you're going to finish, that their investment is going to pay off, that you will eventually get a PhD degree as an applicant. So make sure in your statement of purpose, you're trying to convince directors of graduate study and admission staff that you do have what it takes to be successful, that you know what it takes, and you know that you're going to finish the program. Here's some more general advice. I believe you should have a clear, direct introductory paragraph that introduces your qualifications and fit, a clear statement about the specific program to which you are applying, and the faculty member of the lab you'd like to work in if it's a direct admit to a PI, or name a few you could see yourself working with if it's a rotational program. Do not restate everything in your CV. All the different parts of your application work together to paint a portrait of who you are as an applicant. And so the statement of purpose is what I call precious real estate. What do I mean by that? It's only maybe 2 pages where you have some space to give your audience a view into who you are as an applicant that's not represented in any of the other documents in your application portfolio. So make sure you don't repeat what's already in the rest of your application documents, that you're using it as an opportunity to go more in depth or give some more examples about why you're a good fit for the program. Be really careful of inappropriate content. You should avoid flowery language, which is metaphors, stories, or a lot of emotion. Instead, you should be professional and direct and don't focus too much on the personal. I've read a lot of statements of purpose where people have talked about their childhood or their family members, and that's fine very, very briefly, maybe 1 or 2 sentences if you're trying to give maybe a broad motivation for why you study what you study, but it should not take up more than a few sentences in your statement of purpose. Here's some more advice. If you don't do anything else, number 1, please pay attention to the institutional prompt and follow it in your statement of purpose. Make sure that your statement of purpose is free of typos and grammar or word usage errors. You should get feedback from others. It doesn't matter if English is your first language or not. Everybody needs feedback on their writing. I do too, and I have a PhD in English. Number 3, make sure you include program and institution-specific content to illustrate you're knowledgeable about the program and to illustrate you're a good fit. Also, this proves that you've tailored your statement of purpose and you haven't just sent out the same thing to every program you're applying for. We're going to do a quick activity that I hope will help you think about where you might need to start with statement of purpose. So I would like for you to pick one program or institution to which you'd like to apply, and I'd like you to look up their statement of purpose PhD guidelines on their program or website. So once you've done that, I would like for you to fill out this brainstorming chart. You can do this on a piece of paper, in a document on your computer, however you'd like to do it. But what you're looking for is what institution and what's the specific program name. This is really important because it's really embarrassing if you don't get the program name right in your statement of purpose. You should note what they call it. Most places call it a statement of purpose, but some places might call it a personal statement. Additionally, you might find that different programs might request some other documentation or mix the information in a weird way. So for example, some programs ask for a personal statement about your motivation and background and a research statement. So it's the same kind of stuff that would be in a normal statement of purpose, but kind of split between 2 documents. You should note the length. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4 pages? Is it single spaced or double spaced? Are there other information about how to format the document or length requirements? Content or genre guidelines according to the admissions webpage. That's like the bullet points we saw for both Duke and Stanford. After you've found all of this information, take some time to consider what makes you a good fit for this specific program at this institution. And what makes this specific program a good fit for you? So what can you contribute to this program? And what do you think this program can help teach you? Why do you want to go here? Go ahead and pause this video and take as much time as you need to complete this activity. Now that you've had a chance to complete this activity, I'd like for you to consider doing this kind of brainstorming for every program that you're interested in applying to. Some students will often create a big Excel document with all of this information, plus names of particular faculty members with whom they'd like to work. Whatever works for you, as long as it's organized and it can give you a clear look at the different programs that you're applying for and their similarities and their differences. So my last bit of information for you today is just to remind you that it's so important to seek out support when you're doing really big things like applying to PhD programs. So current graduate students in the Pratt School of Engineering at Duke University can visit the Graduate Communications Center for support with writing and responding to emails to directors of graduate study or faculty to make initial inquiries, like I suggested earlier. The Graduate Communication Center can help with all stages of statement of purpose writing, including brainstorming, organizing or outlining, first drafts, revisions, proofreading strategies, and the Graduate Communication Center can help with oral communication practice. If you are lucky enough, you might get invited to an on-campus visit or you might go and visit a lab. We could help with PhD fit and language interview practice, and also intercultural communication if you find that the people you might be collaborating with in a PhD program might come from a different cultural background than the one that you're used to. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you at the Graduate Communication Center soon.